Robert's with USDA and is involved at the Strong Cities, Strong Communities program and a pilot program, actually. So you're going to talk to us about how well that's going and what we can do to help you, right?
Well, a lot of things.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm just,
Actually, the Strong Cities
I'm just
program
priming the pump
actually
here, Robert. Get going.
came to its natural conclusion, or came over. But actually, what I want to address, and I'll follow the theme of using the road analogy that was up there, but one of the things, to place things in context, that 3 years ago, Governor Cuomo of New York, in his State of the State address, said that broadband is the most important thing for economic development for the state of New York since the interstate highway system was built in the 1950s, and that a statewide system was built to unify the economies of all the regions of New York State. So he committed $1 billion to be used to build that system. And this is basically a middle mile system. $500 million the State of the New York funds, and $500 million, I believe, they raised from a public-private partnership. That system is due to be finished next year. They actually launched it, so it was pretty fast. I was amazed to see how fast it was. If you want to read about it, if you look sometime this summer, there was an article in the New York Times that talked about that and talked about how individual farms were connected to broadband where it's reached so far and how that's completely changed the business opportunities in the operation of the farms in just the way we're talking about today. And I think since I'm going to continue with this highway analogy, when we're talking about broadband, and Gabe alluded to this in his chart with the different speeds, but one of the things to remember, because, first, I would say that let's not forget that broadband, and you've already heard this, is the key to adoption of agriculture technology. Without it, you don't get it. And let's not forget that although 96% of California's population is urban, 95% of the geography is rural. We can't leave out 95% of the state from broadband coverage if you start with that broad public policy setting. But a couple of points about agriculture technology and broadband. Some of the current ag technology does not require high bandwidth or capacity, if you want to talk about it in those terms. But do not be misled, because this is more due to the ag technology attempting to adapt to the lack of high-speed broadband access throughout rural areas. They're trying to make do with that. It does not mean that ag tech will not need high-speed broadband in the future. So we need to build, not the rutted road or the oil on the gravel. I know exactly what you're talking about. In the Midwest, we used to have that until they actually put the asphalt, the harder oil, on the gravel roads in the counties. But we need the paved roads, actually. And in some cases, we need, like New York, superhighway to bring broadband to the farm. So broadband, when you are building a system, which is the great opportunity here is, do not let the system you build become accidentally the speed barrier of the future. Our challenge, and someone talked about railroads earlier, is our challenge is we do not want to build a narrow gauge railroad when we need the standard gauge. Our challenge is I can't tell you what that standard gauge is going to be. Because if you go back in the telecommunications history, when the cell phones first came out, and they didn't draw that much capacity off the system, so the telephone companies built their towers to that capacity. They fundamentally misread the market and did not anticipate the impact of the smartphone and what that did to capacity, and just blew everything out. We don't want to do that, because you've already heard from all the discussions today about this increased use of data from sensors and processing and things going to the cloud. This is where we are already. So that tells you that this need for broadband data transmission, you're going to have a system that can handle those speeds. I know I spend a lot of time talking with different ag tech companies and actual regular ag companies. So in my conversations with John Deere is that they said, they agreed exactly 100%. You cannot overbuild for what the future needs, what ag technology is going to be. The John Deere tractors, which there are those around here, they're full of sensors. And actually what is inhibiting the full utilization of the value of those tractors is lack of broadband for those sensors. So we need the high speed,
not the slow speed data. The Wall Street Journal, will follow this, they had an article this summer and they called rural broadband across the US is basically dial-up. So that's the rutted road, I guess, if you want to call it that. And can we move that to another? Okay, that illustrates all the layers in the rural areas just in one chart. And the newest addition is really ag technology, which keeps driving forward. What I also want to finish is where some of those ruts are. Let's go to the next. There we go. Okay, this chart actually tells you where the ruts are. There is something called the Digital Divide Index, which was developed at Purdue University, which, not as an ad, happens to be where I went to school. But they developed the Digital Divide Index, and they placed it, you can access it over their website, and it takes information from two components. One, the actual broadband signal available from the FCC charts. The other one is based on social economic data, which they looked at criteria which they deem critical to adoption of broadband or adoption of technology. And you can go in and see all the details. And then they merged the two into creating a digital divide index. And the point here is that, well, one, you can access this for California. So if I were doing the research for this project, I go through all the census tract districts for the area and identify the pieces. I'm going to give you 4 examples here. First of all, when you look statewide, at the Digital Divide Index, they start off by counties. So, and then the index goes from 0 to 100. The lowest numbers are the best numbers. So the best number, Santa Clara County. Okay, Silicon Valley, 22.5 on the index. The worst, Modoc County, 71. And I've been up there, and there's no signal in a lot of the places. So even though the GPS on the car just goes dead. So I'm driving around in the woods. I don't know where I am. Sacramento County, 31.7. It's pretty good service. Fresno County, 46.6. But look at the difference. Clovis, no surprise, probably the most affluent census tract district in Fresno County, 36.3, comparable to Sacramento. West Hills, the tract, 56.5, not so good. Go outside of where West Hills is, Huron or the Coalinga census tract away from town, you're up there in the mid-60s. That's terrible service. Now, this opens the door for discussion, and if you went through all the other census tracts, I bet you'll find similar things. This is a guide to open discussion to tell you where those ruts are and where you have to fill it in and pave it. It's not the definitive answer, but it's the start of a guide using the data. And since I'm an economist, everything has to start with some kind of data to get to where you want to go. Those surveys that were done were great because that is also the equal base. That gets you into the farm field. And I'll finish up by saying that USDA right now, there is extreme interest in rural broadband right now, which they have not had before in Washington, D.C. So there's lots of discussion as to what they should do and the connection to the priority of improving the rural economy across the U.S. And one of the things that I found out actually on my own is that the NASS, the National Agricultural Statistics Service, we have an agency for everything, and they actually, this is the hidden asset, they actually do a farm survey asking farmers across the U.S. what kind of computers do you have in your home or your business office, and how do you use it? How's it connected? It was an interesting survey because if I remember off the top of my head, something like 31% who actually connect to something on the internet are using dial-up. So we're back to that rut in the road. Now, it never occurred to them to actually ask farmers in that same survey, what kind of broadband connectivity do you have in the farm field? Which is the purpose of this here. They're open to the idea of including that and working on this issue in the future. So I would say there is an opportunity from here to drive that, to say we need that kind of information, and there's an opportunity from here, and further discussion is you can craft the question that needs to be asked. And they'll probably take it in Washington. So that's my sort of snapshot at this. Thanks.